It's recording. Fantastic.
All right, here we are.
Welcome, Dr. John Richter, who's the founder and CEO of the Immersive Learning Research Network and a faculty fellow at the University of Montana in AI and extended reality technology. So welcome, Jonathan. We're old friends, I think we could call each other, old virtual friends,
Absolutely.
although yet to
Yeah.
meet in person. But thank you for agreeing to do this interview and share your thoughts on immersive learning for our VR school project. So welcome.
Thank you, Erica. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm always glad to talk to you. So we're longtime friends and always have a great chat with you. So yeah, happy to do it.
So John, could you just tell for our listeners what got you in, a bit about your professional background and what got you into this kind of immersive learning space?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Well, I my background's, in psychology originally. Got my bachelor's degree and some professional experience in clinical psychology area. I worked with acutely disturbed children and adolescents originally, and found out that I was a little too sensitive for that area and went into education where I thought that I might be able to collaborate and work with people on health related terms. Creativity has been a huge interest of mine and over the years. How can we nurture people to be more creative? So I ended up getting my master's and PhD or education doctorate in education leadership with an application in technology. Worked in the public schools through graduate school, and then moved on to higher education, where I taught in teacher education for, 4 or 5 years, doing some United States grant work called Preparing Tomorrow's Teachers to Use Technology, and worked to deliver sort of pre-service teacher experiences for college students in the tribal colleges here for Native American students. That is, with the Sioux and the Assiniboine and the Fort Belknap, the White Clay people, as well as the Stonechild College and the Blackfeet. So 4 tribal colleges in northern Montana, as well as like 60 small school districts in north central Montana and the Montana State University in northern. So lots of people, huge area to cover there for my first foray into this instructional technology area. And then my wife decided she wanted to stay in higher education as well. So we went to the University of Oregon for her PhD. And I was like, well, the International Society for Technology and Education, ISTE, is in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon, at University of Oregon. So no problem. And I actually was lucky enough to get a job there at the Center for Advanced Technology and Education, where ISTE was born, had its start. So my mentor, Dr. Lynn Anderson Inman, did a lot of work with students with learning disabilities. So porting sort of the knowledge that they gained out of the late 90s, for how to work with students with learning disabilities, the evidence base that in the classroom, and then she ported that into the computer-based environment. And so I was busy doing a lot of great sort of field work, studies in that area, doing some course design and some instructional design. And she said, John, you're doing great here, but we also want you to pursue your own interests. So she encouraged me to go into research, and I it took me about 2 seconds, and I said, I love video games. So looked at Chris Deedy's work and some others, and started doing some. When I was in Montana, I did a lot of work with electronic portfolios or e-portfolios in teacher ed. And so started doing a number of different kind of projects in e-portfolios and game-based learning at University of Oregon and at AERA, the American Education Research Association annual event. Ended up in a casual conversation, as people do at conferences, about how we needed a special interest group that really helped focus on these virtual and immersive environments. And I don't know how or why, the whole group ganged up on me and said that John will do it. So I went back to Oregon after AERA, and my boss, Lynn, she said she wanted to provide support for this idea. And in kicking it around, I said, I really wish we could collaborate with people like Chris Deedy. And she was like, oh, Chris, yeah, he's been to my house a couple of times. We're old friends. And so she arranged to meet with Chris. And that's kind of how we started. Chris has been sort of our honorary co-chair since 2007 when we got this started at ERA. And around 2013, I was having breakfast with Chris in New Orleans and was telling him that, the SIG, the special interest group that we've been doing, is successful. We had a couple hundred members in our SIG, and but it felt like we were sort of delivering papers to each other, like pizza. These education researchers that were coming to this big conference every year, and we really wanted to engage this bigger population of psychologists and game designers and other people, and it just was really frustrating to do under the auspices of this AERA conference, which had 20,000 people, education researchers attending. So with Chris's sort of blessing of the idea, I stepped out of AERA and collaborated with Michael Gardner and Christian Goodall and some other great European colleagues, Lionel Morgado. And that's how iLRN, the Immersive Learning Research Network, got started. And we've been going ever since. Like 2014, we had a symposium at Oregon State, and we've been having conferences ever since then. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary in Scotland and online. So that's the elevator story.
So happy birthday to iLRN. Like, it's a
Thank you.
fantastic organisation. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in the interview if it's okay. But if you were to arrive at a barbecue, which I know Americans are very good at, slightly different to Australian barbecues, but we've both got that tradition. And somebody said, what do you do? And you said, well, I'm the CEO of this thing called the Immersive Learning Research Network. And they said, well, what's immersive learning? How would you explain that to somebody at a barbecue?
Well, to put that into a we've already got our food, right? I mean, so we're not standing around waiting for our food. That's the first thing I'd say. Wait for the food to come out. But let's say we've dished up. I would say, immersive learning is sort of like a return to the original form of learning. We're all born into an immersive world. We all learn originally by making our way through the world in space with our senses. And that is immersive, right? You're surrounded by situations and you are, engaged in the world through various means, touch and sight and smell. And immersive learning is essentially technology's way of sort of catching up with that human organism of the first one, the easiest one is to surround your vision with the digital. And when you completely surround your vision, with digital, they call that virtual reality. And you know, that's why people have these headsets on. Or if you put your phone into a little headset, you can almost trick yourself into believing you're looking directly into a 360-degree space as well. But so that's immersive learning. But immersive learning is also sound. You know, you can hear things surrounding you. It's taste, it's smell, it's touch. And then really, if you really get into it, it's psychology. It's tricking your brain into thinking that it's in a place. Or sometimes you're even in a place and you're augmenting your experience with the digital or with something other kinds of technology that helps you feel like you're extending your reality into these kinds of spaces. So immersive learning has a lot of different animals in the zoo, but there are the human biological system for learning is very, very old, and it's ways of using the human sensorial systems in ways that really engages you into thinking that you're in a place. So we talk about situated learning, right? So you're learning. You ever like go to a place and somebody tells you a really long story and then they finally give up and say, you just had to be there. And that's immersive learning. Like when you just have to actually be in a situation, like changing a part on a car where you have to reach up and the wrench and the nut have to just be, you know, behind the manifold in a certain way. Like you actually have to be there and understand that engine and its parts to really understand it. Or the first time that somebody ever really lands a space shuttle is the first time that it wasn't in a simulation, right? Because you don't get to practice with a space shuttle unless it's a simulation. So it's these whole varieties of different kinds of experiences that give you a sense of being there in a situation that oftentimes is really difficult to do with traditional kinds of teaching and learning practices. So,
So the experiential element's really important there, as well as, you know, and often we think about that experiential element as being about, you know, simulating real reality, like in real life stuff. But of course, it can be used to create fantastical settings, can't it, in a creative way, and to do things to defy physics, for instance. To do
that's
things
right.
in those kind of virtual spaces or augmented spaces that you couldn't do normally. So, I mean, I like to think about those kind of, you know, pragmatic and practical situations or giving people an experience they might not normally be able to have. But of course, there's also the kind of very imaginative component of it as well, which I think,
That's
you
right.
know, learning is just as or equally important. I don't know.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I think is really fun and exciting is not only these fantastical places or things that you couldn't normally do, like, you know, going down inside of a volcano, a dangerous thing, or an impossible thing, you know, like shrinking down to a nanometer and going inside of an atom or a molecule to explore those chemical bonds. You can play with scale. You know, you could go all the way up to the size of the cosmos to see how far away the Milky Way galaxy is from Betelgeuse or another galaxy. You know, or to go forwards and backwards in time. You know, you can go into a simulation and repeat it over and over to look what would happen if I tried this or that or another thing. And then you know, it's reversible, so you can try all over again. And people can understand phenomenon and they can understand the way that that nature is set up using those kinds of experiential models in ways that really give you sort of that embodied understanding. You feel it in your bones, kind of way, rather than just reading about it or just learning at it from the chalk and talk. Yeah, it's pretty great.
And there used to be a social VR space called Alt Space. It's gone now, but people used to go in there together and they provided toolkits, I suppose, or kind of creation tools or authoring tools where you
Yeah.
could go into a space together and together you could create a fantastical garden, for instance. So you
Right?
could work with people who you didn't really know, or you might know a little bit, and people could join it, and together you would work and to build this kind of, these beautiful and imaginative and incredible spaces, I suppose, and share and enjoy them. And I also always think that, that's one of the things we don't talk about too much when we talk about, for instance, virtual reality, is that ability to bring people together to create in ways that, for instance, children will create in a sandpit. So
Right?
children will join each other and they will create
Yeah,
together and enjoy that and learn from that experience. So you're learning about space, you're learning about putting things together, you're learning about aesthetics, but you're also learning social skills
that's
and
right.
communication skills and a whole lot of things that are really valuable. So, and that's with strangers very often, or, people who you don't really know who they are, people in avatar form. So I think, there's this incredible social component too that can be part of that.
Oh, 100%. I think virtual reality had sort of the reputation of being an isolating or lonely sort of experience for a really long time. And I think that's completely flipped upside down, like you say. Like there's so many virtual reality experiences now that are really, really social. And you can get people from all over the world collaborating. And the co-constructive piece, like you said, people can make things together, so you're not just passively consuming knowledge or games or information. You can co-create these things together, and that's really, really exciting, I think, for educators and well, everyone. Yeah, lots of possibilities.
He's amazing. John, could you tell me a bit about, or tell our audience a bit about the Immersive Learning Research Network? That's iLRN for anyone that wants to Google it, or maybe not Google it soon, because I've noticed that the antitrust law came down today, or judgment came down around Google
Right.
being part of a monopoly, but anyone that wants to use a search engine to find the Immersive Learning Research Network, how is the Immersive Learning Research Network set up? Who's it for? And what sort
Right.
of projects are you doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, for one part is, kind of understanding how these kinds of immersive learning projects are created, that we've talked about the game engines, or we've talked about the video games, and a lot of them are designed or created using those kinds of different tools, whether collaboratively or teams of individuals working together. And it takes a lot of technical experience to be able to create that. um, so there's the computer science related, this hardware and the software and how to program and develop these things efficiently and under budget. That's a whole field of expertise. The game design thing also, the game studies, or how to engage and hook people into these things. And then the learning or the teaching. So there's this immersive learning field has a lot of different kinds of expertise, and to tap into how to create those high quality experiences. We thought that coming up with a network of people where people could share expertise and also invite people who are interested but don't know how, they can come in, we'll welcome them into the circle, and they can find different pathways to learn and scale up too, to level up, to use the gaming parlance. And so Immersive Learning Research Network, or iLRN or iLearn, is a scholarly network, right? So it's academic in the sense that we're really looking for the evidence for what works for immersive learning applied broadly. So the learning doesn't have to be in kindergarten through primary and secondary school, or even higher education. It doesn't need to be formal immersive learning. It could be in museums, or it could be informal, just learning, in any context, honestly. And so we're looking for that evidence and trying to share that and amplify it, and then help people to find and use those high quality immersive learning experiences broadly. So we're a United States nonprofit, but we're globally applied. We're trying to engage people all over the world. We have a tendency since the beginning to host a conference in Europe, and then the following conference in the Americas, and go back and forth. But we'd love to, come to Australia, or go to anywhere in the Asia Pacific. I went down to South America and collaborated with my friend Jorge Baca Costa in Colombia. And we're looking at creating lots of different projects there. So we've done some focus with Judith Okonkwo and some other great experts about ways that we can bring some immersive learning and amplify great projects that are happening in Africa, in India, so all over the world. So our mission basically is to create this professional association around immersive learning and its complexities, and then ultimately to help humanity and our world. So we want to be able to use the incredible power of these things, and we want to be able to make them accessible, and we want them to have impact. So what does that look like? In addition to the conference, we host our annual conference, and that's kind of the big show. But we also have frequent webinars that we host on particular topics, and we have an innovation garden for designers and educators for how to use and make these immersive learning spaces. And because this space is constantly moving and constantly changing, and there's new technologies coming out all the time, we also have a futures component with our eye on the emerging horizon of the new technologies that are coming out and the implications that they might have. So we have a State of XR and Immersive Learning project, which talks about immersive futures, like where is all this going, and how can we make the best, most bountiful, healthy use of these things? Did that answer your question?
John, could I ask you a bit about that then, about where you see the future of, where you see it now and where it might be in 5 years? And of course, with the advent or the scaling up of artificial intelligence technologies, which have usually, or have been included in extended reality environments. They build them, they're included in the design element, they help power those sorts of environments. Yeah. But like how you see the future of XR, I suppose, in education, or extended reality in education, that's augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, and where you see it going in, like now, where it is now, and what it might look like in 5 years with these kind of new innovations.
Well, that's a great question, and there's a lot of possibility space there. There's so many different trends or directions that we might go in. As a former member of the World Future Society and an aspiring professional futurist, I was told many, many times, if someone puts a microphone in your face and tells you to predict the future, you're not supposed to answer them. You can not with a prediction. You can give them a possibility space. So with that caveat in mind, because we live in this increasingly complex, increasingly fast-paced, and increasingly complicated world. And so the possibility space just keeps opening up more and more all the time within these different dimensions. I think that immersive learning is only going to get more interesting. I think that you're seeing already a movement of like the virtual.
It looks like John's frozen, so we'll
Virtual
see.
reality had some mechanism. Oh, sorry about that.
You're just frozen, but you're back now, and that's the main thing. Okay.
Sorry
Go
about
back
it. Hey,
about 10
everybody.
seconds ago.
You missed the best part of my talk. No, I think the virtual reality, I think you're going to start to see some convergence and some standards being built around some of those areas. I'm hoping that some of those big companies can start to play together a little more nicely in the future. I don't know about interoperability necessarily. I think you're going to see haptics starting to take off, but the bigger story, I think, for education that has not yet really taken off as much that I think could happen within 5 years is the augmented reality. I think augmented reality is poised to be a massive thing for education and learning. So rather than just a virtual reality simulation, the augmented reality applications, I think, are going to be absolute, game changer for many. I also think that you're going to see some increasing game-based learning done at a more professional level. You're going to start to see some video games that have educational outcomes more solidly grounded within them. And those are some of my predictions, but different cultures, different ways of being, different perspectives. I think that currently seems to be like a trend or a kind of an area that you're starting to see grow. But I don't want to give away sort of the some of the things that we're doing with the state of XR. So I can't say too much.
No, that's fair enough. So a lot of people, school teachers, will be watching this as well as other educators. So what would you say to them, the greatest opportunities in this space for them? What advice would you give?
Well, I would look to sort of some of the low code or no code solutions, giving opportunities for your students to experience some of these things, finding some of the luminaries like yourself who, sort of have, or not sort of, but have great advice in terms of how teachers can use these things safely and effectively within the boundaries of their classroom environments. What other kinds of advice would I have for practicing teachers? I mean, some of it is to, a lot of teachers are very rightly concerned about privacy. They're rightly concerned about, the huge amount of variable things that can happen within these environments. So I would look for sort of these resources that are curated and have been kind of taken care of. And I know you've got a whole variety of different kinds of examples of those kinds of technologies. But even, creating sort of safe spaces that are under the teacher's control, like Frame VR or those kinds of things, where the students and the teachers can meet together within the boundaries of that space and just explore together. I think there's a lot of possibility for that. So is that good advice? I'm not sure.
No, I think that kind of bringing teachers and students together into the same virtual space in a social mode and giving them authoring toolkits to play with, to create.
Right.
is the kind of way of the future, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I also think, we need to think about designing learning activities where not everyone's in VR. Like this whole notion of a class set of VR, I think is,
Oh,
the
right.
one-to-one device doesn't work in this space necessarily. We need to think about designing units of work and lessons where VR might be, a station for learning
That's right.
in the sequence, I suppose, and people can, and
Yeah,
students can cycle in and out. So it's something and that would get round, I think, some of the concern about the expense of the technology as well.
that's
So
right.
it's come down a lot in price, but it's better to invest in 5 or 10 headsets rather than needing a class set all the time. Yeah.
That's right. And we don't really want students or really anybody to spend hours and hours and hours inside the VR headset. They're really, look for those opportunities where immersion can have a high impact and they can go in, spend 20 minutes to a half an hour inside the VR headset. And that's plenty. So that's, I think it's one set of instructional tools that can be made really useful. But don't turn the students out to use them with free time. Try to find the applied way of having them engage with something that matters. Yeah.
I mean, it has
And
to be part of formal learning. As it's just not an extracurricular or a fun activity. So that's what, thinking about working towards that. And I'm working with teachers to do that, I suppose.
yeah.
So, John, have you got any other advice or words of wisdom for our audience around this space? I mean, maybe you could, having those AR authoring tools might be nice. I mean,
Right.
they're not huge amounts of them out there, are there? People can,
There aren't.
so, I mean, this to me
There needs
seems
to be
a
more.
space,
Yeah.
for developer where they could create, AR authoring tools where students can create their own augmented reality experiences,
Yeah.
interactive augmented reality experiences. But yeah,
Right. Snapchat is probably the most used, augmented reality. You have Snapchat in
yeah,
Australia, of course, yeah. And not a lot, most, but a lot of kids and other people have used the Snapchat filters that'll change your face and they're fun. I'm not sure the extent to which they can be applied to educational use, but yeah, you're right. I mean, we definitely need some augmented reality kits that we could use to, go into a gallery and look through the lens of your phone or glasses at a gallery artifact or a painting, and then have more information about that particular artifact or painting come to life and engage you in different ways, whether it's informational or to extend the painting or the artifact itself in various meaningful ways. Would be so fantastic.
imagine
But
if you had like an authoring kit where you could go for a local history project into the local environment. Children and young people themselves could research and tell the stories by using these AR kits, like in a local history way. So it wasn't just a photograph and you're telling the story, but you could they themselves could create augmented reality experiences
right,
related to their local communities. And then
their interpretation,
easily share them. I mean, that would be incredible in terms of
wouldn't it?
learning outcomes. Yeah.
And I think so. I don't know for sure, but it seems so technically feasible that it could be done to create something like that. Um, you know, Seeing some of the past applications that are no longer on the market even, but they once existed, so sure would be neat to see those.
I think there's great educational potential there actually and uptake in schools. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, John, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your wisdom around the immersive learning space. Where's the next conference going to be held at?
Our 11th annual conference will be in Chicago, Illinois, in the middle of June of 2025. It'll also be online, so all over the world in various time zones. We're looking for people to host from their own time zone. We hopefully will make a lot of content accessible all over the world. But please, if you're interested, come to Chicago, Illinois too. So, and then the year after that will be in Athens, Greece.
Fantastic. And I'll put the link to iLRN on the VR School blog site so people can
Awesome.
find you. So thank you, Dr. Jonathon Richter. Like, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And we really look forward to seeing more from iLRN and for people who are interested in this space to join iLRN as well. So that'll be great. I'm a member
Well,
and I highly recommend it.
thank you, Dr. Erica Southgate. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.